Good evening, and welcome to the Putnam Valley Board of Education business meeting of January 23rd, 2020. Please stand and join me as we salute our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to resolve on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools to approve the minutes of the work session/business meeting of January 9th, 2020.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I'd like to announce that the treasurer's report for November 2019 is available in the business office. And moving on to presentations, it is budget time, so we are beginning our budget presentations. Dr. Ruff, you're going to cue up.
So our first presentation this evening will be from Brian Burrow, who's going to give our athletics, physical education, and health budget presentation for this year. So welcome, Brian. Thanks.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Very good. So I wanted to start out with an overview of the objectives of the athletic department. And we try to maintain and supply equipment and facilities that are safe for our students, number one. We want to make sure that we're fiscally responsible. Try to make sure that we're not overbuying and we can share and use equipment across multiple programs. And we've been pretty successful in doing so, which has allowed us to, again, maintain those safe environments and maintain the equipment in a little bit easier fashion without increasing our athletic budget. The goal is to provide a positive community-centered experience through partnerships and collaboration. We work very closely with a lot of the community groups, youth lacrosse, youth baseball, Parks and Rec, and any of the other variety of groups that come in and either share our facilities, whether it's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, anything like that. We make sure that we can book them and give them the time that they need and can utilize the school in the best capacity that we can offer for them. And of course, provide opportunities for our student athletes to build good character, responsibility, self-discipline, and work ethic, including respect for themselves and others, which, you know, in my mind, that's what I entered athletics thinking about when I was a young man, and we really want to hold that in the forefront to provide an opportunity for young people to grow into responsible community members. So some of the updates this year, we have a new high school nurse, Tish Mondello. So far, she's getting rave reviews. She was here as a float nurse a few years ago. She was our first float nurse. She had left, and then when she heard the opportunity was open, she reached out, and after interviews, we decided that she was our top candidate. She's been doing a great job so far. Last year and the beginning of this year, we rolled out the health and wellness website. The hope for this website is that it is a community-centered experience, that if there's something that we're not providing, that a community member or a school member thinks that we should add, that we can review that material through the Health and Wellness Committee and then add it to the website. And if you go there and visit it, you'll see that we have basic categories that we try to populate with up-to-date articles. And then the goal is to have a section on the side where we archive so that we keep it as fresh as possible. So if in your internet travels you see something that might help, that's a reliable source, please send it on and we'll review it to add to the website. Along the same lines, we updated the athletic website, and a lot of that stemmed out of the PEAC committee and various requests from community members when they call in, looking for something, information that they aren't sure where to find. I'll usually try to keep them on the phone a minute or two, see what else we can provide and make it better, so that in the future, everything that a parent might want to access is on there. I think we've made some improvements in that direction. One of the things that I would like to still add is contact information for coaches, so that parents can reach out and interact that way if need be for practice and such. It usually occurs at the beginning of seasons when schedules aren't really relayed yet fully to the student and then the parent and so on and so forth, or middle school age students whose parents are just wondering, what middle school sports entails, what are the practices, things of that nature. Usually very simple questions, but it's nice for them to understand and know who their child is going to be with after school and traveling around with. You're giving up your student, and you want to trust that they're a good human being on the other end. So a lot of that is just a little interaction that they get, and they feel a lot more comfortable that they have the ability to reach out. So we'd like to add that. We had the first cross-country race here held on campus. It was very exciting. Thanks really go out to Dave Spittle's vision on that trail, and then a whole lot of thanks goes out to our grounds crew. We have a new grounds crew, Nick Ivazej, along with James Constable and Scott Stevens. They are our mainstays in the grounds department, but we had a whole bunch of graduates come back in the summer and help do a lot of work around here. So I'm sure you've heard about it. If you know one of them, it was a big undertaking. So it was very exciting to actually be able to get a race in, just try it out, see how it went, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to facilitate bigger races up to varsity level. That's the goal. Perfect placement. For perfect placement, you can see that there is a video on the athletic website. It's the second time that we've had Mark Lineweaver in. He's a Yorktown graduate. Now, the presentation is earmarked as an athletics placement for college, but really, anybody watching it will realize that it's really for any student that is going to go to college. There's very little actually on the athletics piece. Anyone that is thinking about going to college and figuring out a good place for themselves should actually watch that presentation. It really puts into perspective, what you actually like as a person, and then tries to gear that towards your selection process. And then he also talks about the athletic piece. So it's available on the website all the time. If you have any questions, please let me know. We have put new banners in the high school gymnasium and around the campus, home and away signs. Even just this evening, we had people come in for the Peekskill boys basketball game, which our JV team won in overtime. Congratulations. And I saw parents from visiting schools looking up and saying, "Oh, we're over on the visitor section here." So it's very helpful. Just makes it clear where you're supposed to go, and helps everyone out, along with the variety of championship banners that we have inside the gym. This year we added indoor winter track. We had 31 athletes register for that sport. It was a big hit, which was expected. I believe it will grow. The only area in the budget outside of natural salary increases contracted is considering to add an assistant in that program, being that it's 31 athletes. We have varsity assistants in each of the other sports. I talked to Dr. Luft about the fact that since we have had a few of the JV teams haven't been running, that the stipend money would be there already. So it wouldn't really be a felt impact to the budget, more of a shift, to where we would need it, reallocation, so to speak. We had 3 scholar athlete teams for the fall: girls cross country, girls swimming, and field hockey. And we added 2 programs with Parks and Recreation, which would be youth wrestling and youth cheerleading. So there's a variety of other programs, but those 2 are new this year. So here you could take a look at 4 years of the registration numbers And it's always a toss-up whether to put registration numbers or actual team rosters. When you're holding teams such as basketball and so on and so forth, that you're pretty much keeping a similar number each year. If we were to put roster numbers down, it would probably look a little bit more stagnant, so to speak. Where you're putting registration numbers, you're kind of seeing more who is trying to go out for programs, whether or not they remain with them or make a team, but it's more that these individuals are attempting and willing to make that team. And I think it does show a little bit more of a picture of what our kids are going out for, rather than just roster numbers there. So this is what the budget actually includes. You'll see transportation, which is to and from contests and practices, whether the practices are at Copper Beach or other off-site facilities. We have 70 coaches total at the moment. We have 1 lifeguard, which we actually this year were able to roll into a coaching position, so we didn't actually expend any money in the lifeguard line. We had a coach that filled the assistant coach role for swimming as well as the lifeguard role. And we have a variety of volunteers throughout our programs at the time. We have the support staff, which includes all of our chaperones, the trainer, EMTs if we need them. We haven't needed them now that we have a trainer in-house, and we also utilize one of our teachers, Andrea Bealey, when we need a substitute. We always keep a secondary company kind of on standby, but we haven't needed to utilize them over the last 2 years. This is clock operators, game security, including whether we need deputies at games, and the game officials. It includes the director salary as well as the athletics secretary salary, BOCES dues. There's a variety of other things that we go through BOCES, such as Huddle, which is our video program, reviewing games and things of that nature. The impact testing is now moved to our insurance company, which provides it at no cost to us, so we reduce that cost there as well. The New York State Public High School Athletic Association dues, which we need to join in order to participate in sectionals and hold teams that participate in Section 1 and New York State Championships and things like that. We have equipment, materials and supplies, uniforms, the reconditioning and repair. And the increases are really based in the salaries as per the contracts. And then we also have the BOCES officials fees and dues. So we don't control that. So that one line, if you were to look at that, it is always an estimate of what their increase is going to be. At this point now, doing this, I think this is budget 6 for me, we've got a pretty good picture of how it increases each year, and we've been pretty close to that number if you look at actual and then budgeted over the last 5 years. So, and then we have accolades. We had Brona Cassidy is the first female Putnam Valley cross country state qualifier this year. And that's Coach Todd Sinclair. He's a new cross country coach. He is returning for next season, which is great news. And Coach Bill Scampoli there. Christina Turner surpassed 1,000 career volleyball assists, and she ended with 1,340. Kelly Venezia passed 1,000 career basketball points a few weeks ago. She's the third female athlete to do that in the school. Christy Dinney, Christine Kemp, and now Kelly. So we'll get her point total hopefully deep into February. We'll see. Will Carano, just 2 weekends ago, went 6-2 in Eastern States, earning a 5th place finish. This is by far the most difficult wrestling event on the East Coast. There are probably over 110 state qualifiers that are wrestling in this. You have probably 50 or 60 6th place or up state finishers. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. A 5th place in this is really impressive. I mean, Coach Carano doesn't usually call, and he really doesn't usually call about young Will. for whatever reason. He just, he wants to be humble about it. And man, you should have heard him on the phone. He was just beyond excited and couldn't wait to tell me how incredible it was and get these pictures out to share with everybody. You could see on their faces, right? So we have Regina Albano is in her final year as a coach at Putnam Valley. I have the total at 36. I'm going to put 36 plus just in case so I don't make a mistake here. She's been coaching multiple sports per year. She's a 4-time sectional title winner, undefeated in sectionals. Okay, so ever since cheer was a sport, she has won it every single year. It's incredible. She's a 2-time New York State runner-up. She did come in 3rd once as well. And last night she won in the Westchester County Center, 1st place. So many countless events that she's put on here for Putnam Valley. Powder Puff, which is a fundraiser. The class will select a sponsor and raise money for that group. Tiger Tournament, which is our cheerleading tournament, it's coming up this Saturday. The Harlem Wizards, incredible fundraiser, and the kids just absolutely go bonkers for those athletes. Color Wars, countless others. I mean, anyone that has been involved in an event or run an event with Regina really knows that it's going to be run well, it's going to be run on time, which as a parent, that's what you want. It's unbelievable. So I just want to say thank you to her. That'll be some big shoes to fill, all right? She mentors a lot of our younger coaches, talks them with her experience and things like that, sharing different things and, just steering them and guiding them in the right direction. So we're going to miss her. And last night we had Angelica Ordonez wins the Annette Haranish Westchester County Center cheerleading scholarship that is based on academics, athletics, and there was a community service interview. And Regina was talking to me yesterday about this, how incredible this scholarship win was. There's 2,500 applicants, something like that. And the committee that was deciding who gets these scholarships said that we will never forget this young lady. In her interview, she was talking about things that she does outside of school. It's incredible. I don't want to share just in case she would be embarrassed, but the things she does for her family, for the community, would really blow your mind. And then she's just a great person to begin with. So congratulations to her. We have a couple pictures from phys ed class, and I will open it for any questions you may have. And I can return to a slide if you'd like.
So in terms of, and we're going to see the full budget throughout this process.
Sure.
The numbers are pretty much staying the same,
Yeah.
with possible reallocation or shifting for.
Right. So if you were to look at the actual lines, you would see no increases outside of the salaries. And even within that, if you look closely, because of the way the turnover works, so you have someone like Regina who's on step 5 and then with longevity, right? If she retires and we hire another coach, even we try to make that number as accurate as possible. So I'll go through each and every line for each and every coach and estimate out for the next year, whether it's somebody that's coming back and what their next year's salary is going to be, or so on and so forth. So it should be pretty accurate. And I don't remember right off the top of my head, but I believe it went down. I only remember that because Jill questioned why it went down. And when we looked at it, I think it was because of the number of coaches that we had turning over, and they're newer to Putnam Valley. So.
Can I ask a question regarding slide 6, please? And also with the coaches.
I don't have numbers. If
I'm sorry.
You could just tell me which one.
Athletic budget
The budget
includes?
includes, yes, that one.
Sure.
Thank you. So, for example, fall 28 coaches. Does that include JV football? Is that what's offered, or that's what's held?
So in the past few years, we have retained JV football coaches. Back a few years ago, when we first were seeing a decline in some of the fall sports, that's really where we took a hit as far as the JV programs, JV soccer, JV field hockey, things of that nature. We spoke with the PEAC committee and some of the other community members about retention of coaches. It's very difficult. And when you get good coaches, you want to hold on to them. And the fear was, if we are on that edge of really not knowing, because we really try to have them, right? We want to have those programs. It's incredibly difficult to get them back. So we hope to get them. And if you were to release them or not hire them, people will not apply if you're in that close range. If they find out, oh, we may or may not have it, and they know Putnam Valley is going to release them at the last minute when they find out, we're not going to get people to apply for those positions. So when we're on the edge, we do try to hold them if we have a quality candidate. That being said, we've held the JV football because we thought we were close the last 2 years, but we have not hired for field hockey. We have not hired for both of these soccer programs, so on and so forth. So where we know we won't, we try to not hire for those positions.
And the athletes move up to varsity, so you do have that increased number in varsity.
Yeah, so the idea being, if we have that situation and we do retain coaches, that they work closely with the younger athletes, because that's the most difficult part, right? You have younger, maybe freshmen, maybe even some sophomores that really aren't ready for that varsity level, but because we just don't have that JV, they get put into that position. It's very difficult. So you don't want them to lose interest, lose heart, all of that, and we try to pull them aside, bring them up skill-wise, strategy-wise along the way, so they're not just standing on the sideline. That's the goal. Yeah.
I know that we hired Tish, that's become the high school nurse, and she was working as the floating nurse.
Mm-hmm.
Can you just provide an update in terms of where, have we been able to find a new floating? I know this was a conversation we had back and
Yeah.
forth. And where we stand with that, because I know there was just an email today, ironically, about it, so.
Right, so finding substitute nurses is very difficult. And what we found, we initially gained a float nurse a few years ago that was two days a week. And then they were to be our go-to substitute nurse, right? Almost like we had one on retainer. It didn't really work that way because nobody wants to work 2 days a week, really. So they ended up having other jobs. So when we needed to have them sub in, unless we had it planned well in advance where they could work it out with their other job, they wouldn't be able to sub for us anyway. And anytime you have that part-time position, we know it rolls over. So when Tish was here initially, she went for a full-time job, rightfully so. And then we had another float nurse that was, again, excellent and really trained multiple nurses the year we had no high school nurse. So really, they paid it forward to Putnam Valley tenfold that year. Once we found a nurse last year, that float nurse went and moved into more acute, kind of more exciting type care, right? That was her passion. So she stepped away, and last year we had a nurse turnover in the high school because of the commute. And when that became available, Tish she heard we were open again, and she wanted to come back because she enjoyed it here. So to answer your question, we haven't filled the float position. We've been steadily advertising for substitute nurses. I interviewed 3 that were former graduates and felt really excited that even though they had other jobs, that they would be willing to sacrifice a day, if they work a night, to come help us out. And it's been working a little bit, but that is a very big struggle in the district at this point. And if you go on OLAS at any given time, you'll see most districts just leave it as a running advertisement because there's so few out there.
You have noted clock operator, and I know there's some miscommunication within the community about that. Can you
Sure.
explain who's eligible to be clock operators?
Of course.
And how that
So it needs to be offered to PVFT employees first, and then if there's no one to fill that position, it goes to the CSEA employees.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if that
Oh, no,
answers
yeah,
the
it is,
question.
just to make it clear that it just can't be, I can't run the clock. It goes to-
Right.
So,
I can't either.
right.
They- yeah.
Okay.
No.
Sorry, one other question. You talked about communication and the website now. Do you have, I'm sorry, I haven't been on the
That's okay.
website. Do you have an FAQ on the website? Because that's one thing I hear about, communication with coaches and the protocol and all. So if you don't have an FAQ, that might be something you want to put up there.
No, I
comment
would
questions you receive.
toss it back though, and if you could give me some examples of what that might look like, it might be something that we can add on there. I would want it to be productive and not
Right.
lead to more problems. I'd rather someone called.
Mhm.
Usually the problems or misunderstandings are unique, so it's better to talk directly to a parent and try to really get at what the confusion is, or because they, more often than not, they just feel like they're kind of in the unknown. And when we talk about it, it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, this is new, and we just work through it. And it makes them more comfortable talking to me and then communicating out to the coach, you know, that their kid is going to be safe. This is what the plan is. This is how we try to facilitate the communication through the student and to the parent. But if you have specific things that you're thinking of right now, please send them on, and we'll take a look, and we can certainly add that. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
When I look at the registration totals, it's hard to tell whether we've got more students interested or not, because
Mm-hmm.
there's a different number of students in school
Correct.
each of those years.
Yeah.
So I don't know if percentage-wise, is about the same percentage of students going out for sports? I mean, has that been consistent? It's just hard to tell with the numbers.
It is. It kind of ebbs and flows. I think when you look at fall, that overall dropped, and I think, if you look 3 years and then all of a sudden there's like 27 person drop, that's probably due to the JVs in the fall.
Okay.
The winter went up this year, and I think it's, a significant jump up. Spring is pretty steady if you think about it, for varsity and JV. Spring modified kind of had a rise there, and then it's back to about the average that we've had. It's the fall and winter that went down, and I was talking to Dr. Luft earlier today, and anticipating the presentation, and I personally don't have a direct explanation for that. It would be interesting to see whether it's an enrollment or different interests in kids all
Right,
of a
'cause
sudden.
we had some bubble classes go through
We
that
did,
were fairly
yeah.
large. I
One
just
thing-
wondered.
It is curious. Last year I mentioned maybe there's an increase in theater or band or things of that nature. So it'd be, not just with enrollment, you can't just look at enrollment, but overall participation of students within the district. That would be really interesting, because I have no problem if a kid's passion is theater, band, whatever it happens to be. That's great. Do something. That's the goal, right? So it would be nice if they did 2 or 3 things, being a small school, but that would be a question I would try to dive into, is what are the other enrollments in the different programs.
Okay.
Do you have a minimum participation in a sport?
Well, that's probably why we dropped the JVs. So football, for example, you can't start a game without 16 eligible, ready-to-go players. And so 2 years ago, we had 24 signups in June, and you just never know who's going to walk out there. So we had 18 or 19 walk out onto the field to actually go for it. We had 2 injuries, a wrist break and another, significant injury that was going to keep them out. And there we were at 16. And I think then we had 1 more injury, and that's it. We don't have a program. So we did field questions of, why did you do this? And that's not how it works. Believe me, every single day that entire coaching staff was required to come in from practice, sit down, talk to me about where we are, what are the numbers, can we do it, is this realistic, so on and so forth. And then it got to the point where there were multiple days where it wasn't there, and we have to call it, because we have to tell all of the rest of the section, you just lost a game. You have to go out now and try to get games. And so, you have a responsibility not just to the community in trying to run that program, but once that number dips below that number, you have to let it go. You know, you can't just hold on to it. What happens is if you start playing games and then you drop it, all those teams are required to forfeit. They can't play. It's a forfeit. So they can't actually play. So they all just lose games. Do you understand that point? So.
Then Section 1 determines what those numbers are?
Section 1 in the state. The state puts them out. Section 1 can determine a more restrictive number. They can't expand them. Yeah.
But it would be different for every sport.
Yeah.
Because there
yeah,
could
so,
be one
so
golfer.
soccer.
Right. There could be
Right.
one golfer.
Back
there
in the
could-
day
Right,
when I was
and that
coaching
was my
soccer,
question,
you know, when we
not
had
really
we
football.
we would run a team with 13 or 14
Right.
athletes.
But it's each sport dependent.
Correct. So you have to start a soccer. The game ends at 7. When you have less than 7, it's over. So it's different.
Which would be why we do some merged sports, because you don't have enough for our own,
Swimming.
right?
Hockey.
That is one good reason. Typically, a merger will be a school will only have a couple athletes, and they'll ask to merge. Our swimming, we saw girls swimming drop
Yeah.
down to about 11, right about when I first came in, 2015, 2016. I think it was 2016 because I remember Karen saying, you know, if we don't have a merger, it's over, it's dropped. And we reached out to Mayapack, I think in 2016, and they said, we're not ready yet, but we want to plan it for 2017. And then we added it in 2017. And that's been a very successful merger that we've had. The team gets along great. They are actually able to compete and win now because they're able to fill enough of the races and positions in the races that they can score enough to do well. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully we're winning by the time you get back down there. All right, so our next presentation this evening will be Dr. Natalie Doherty, who's going to give our first look at our special education budget for this year.
Good evening. I'm Natalie Doherty, Assistant Superintendent for PPS and HR. Tonight I'll be reporting out on my special education projections, and they really are projections because, as you know, the CSE meetings aren't really finished until May and June. But we try and project based on current numbers and some assumptions, but there are always changes. And then I broke my slides into two different sets. One is special education and my budget, and then reporting out on student counseling because we added the position last year. So I just really wanted to give you an update on the things that we've been doing for the school community. So really our motto is about just teaching differently because all of our students learn differently and have different needs. I always like to show the October snapshot, and the October snapshot is really the state captures our data in October, and every year that data is submitted in October. And what I did is I broke down the amount of classified students, our current total number of out-of-district students, and then I broke it down per building for the elementary, middle, and high school. So as you can see, our numbers in terms of classified students have really stayed pretty consistently. We have some bigger grades, some smaller grades, and our numbers fluctuate with those larger grades and smaller grades. But overall, pretty consistent. Our out-of-district numbers, that's really where students need specialized programs, and it's always a balance because we try and keep really all of our students. But when a student really does need a specialized program, making those decisions with families is really, it's a difficult one, but at times we understand it is very necessary. Our out-of-district students in the elementary level have remained consistent at our middle school, where we did really see an increase since 2017-18 is at the high school. Our numbers are coming back down. As you know, we did last year look at really bringing on a school counselor, which is why I talked about that need last year, and really the social emotional needs of our students have really changed and increased over the years. And actually, let me go back to the slide. So every year we have a process for our out-of-district students. Some families really like us to be overly involved, or heavily involved, I should say, in their students' out-of-district experience. Some parents really prefer that we just, because it's too overwhelming, that we just sort of have the annual review, and every year we go out. One school psychologist visits all of our students. Our CSE chairperson, Melissa Estrella, goes, wrong Melissa. Melissa Estrella has begun her out-of-district observations, and I usually try and see our students as well in their settings, making sure that things are going well, and then the schools send us their progress reports and things like that throughout the school year. So we try and, for lack of a better word, customize it according to the family and really what they want and what they need, and the students. So our staffing needs, again, these are projected numbers based on what we're seeing right now as sort of our trends for this year. One CSE chairperson, there's really no change. We have 5 school psychologists. The only change that will happen there, and you'll see that later in my slides, is that I'm going to have one of the high school psychologists move down to cover 8th grade and do 8, 9, and then some other students at the high school as well. So I just think that the consistency for 8 to 9 and that transition will be very helpful for all of the special educators, the school principal, the school psychologist, and most of all, the parents and the students. So the speech therapist, right now we have 3.4, 3.49, but we're only using 3.4, so that's 3 full-time people and 1.4 person. So that I'm expecting to go down somewhat. Special education teachers. The only caveat with the special education staff is really whether or not, and we'll talk about this probably later on. I'll give you an updated report on my projections for next year with the special education staff. We do have one person retiring at the high school, and that could offer a decrease in a 0.6, but I won't really know that until our numbers, until the CSE meetings happen and we make decisions based on student needs. So I will come back and certainly update the board on that, and keep Jill, obviously, and Dr. Loft apprised the entire way. Teaching aides, we have 4 teaching aides in the district. They serve almost exclusively general education students at this time, but I do report out on them, so I'm not expecting any change. We do have currently 36 teaching assistants in the district. I think there's about 13 that are assigned to general education positions. I'm not expecting any changes at this time for that. So one of the things that I really want to talk about, and sort of new and ongoing initiatives, and this would be a new initiative for us, really moving it up. Some of the needs that we're seeing with our, we have 2 cohorts at our elementary school that have a really significant high level of need, and there's a method called the Carbone method. So I really foresee our teachers needing training over the next few years in order to implement some of the verbal behavior supports that students are going to need. So I've identified that as certainly a new initiative. Really, I think that we need to look at, because of our student needs and the population that we're seeing, that we need to really look at our smaller classes and do some 5-year projections. Again, they're projections, but they are helpful in budget planning, in having teachers trained properly, making sure our assistants are trained properly, and making sure even our hall monitors or our bus drivers and things like that, because as our student needs change, their training needs to change. And then really this is just the second part of, is really just the planning for teachers and assistants and monitors, and what that's gonna look like over the next 5 years. Really to refine our co-teaching practices, we have really, our teachers have taken on co-teaching and really own it and use the 6 different models quite frequently. There was a time when you could walk into a special education classroom and really just see one teacher helping in the background, and I almost never see that anymore. I really see the classroom divided into 2 or divided into stations, and both teachers really sharing responsibility, and it's something I think that they should be very proud of. Training for functional behavior analysis and behavior intervention plans. I think that our school psychologists, in order to, with seeing the needs of our students, of our youngest students, I believe that they need more training in those particular areas. And then social emotional learning, really just understanding how trauma needs to inform our instruction and making sure that our teachers are receiving the supports that they need in order to understand when we're faced with students that are coming to us with certain types of trauma and certain types of behaviors, that we're able to manage them in a way that is going to meet their needs and be most effective for all of the students in a classroom. So I want to talk a little bit about school counseling services. Last year, we added a position, and we moved Laura Kildoff to the elementary school, and then placed the new person, Kendall Coleman, at the middle school, and have our 3 school counselors still at the high school. So this year, Ms. Kildoff has done an amazing job holding new lessons, constantly having social emotional lessons in the classroom. We use the program called Second Step. The topics include empathy, identifying feelings, respecting differences, bullying, what it means to be an upstander, emotional management, calming down strategies. We've expanded our group counseling. We have really, Ms. Kildoff has multiple groups, social groups that really are addressing very specific needs of students. Again, when I look at the high school numbers and the out-of-district placements that we've had, it really has been in the area of social emotional learning. And one of the things we identified was that children weren't coming up with the social emotional skills to be able to manage and regulate themselves. So we thought by being much more proactive at the elementary level, that would change things. So we're hopeful for that. And then she also does Changing Families groups, which is really about all different types of families and acceptance and, really acceptance and also just becoming okay with being different if you're from a different type of a family. And then the Worry Warriors, which is a great group because school anxiety and school phobia has become really a national sort of epidemic. And her groups really focus on how to overcome your fears and how to notice anxiety in others and how to work with your peer groups if you have an anxious friend. So some of the groups at the middle school work on some different things, but it really is aligned. We have aligned a curriculum outlined in grades K through 8, and now we're working with the high school people on 9 through 12, we've identified the topics, but really just refining them at the high school. But at the middle school, right here, let me see. We've introduced students to Naviance, which is much earlier than we ever have before, but we felt that really, by the time they got to high school, to put them on Naviance in 9th or 10th grade, we were, and teaching them all of the tools that are there for them, and for their parents, quite frankly, was really just too late. So we backed it up to 5th grade, and they really complete just a thing about me survey for sort of that first step in self-discovery. Each student is learning about SMART goals and creating their own personal goals. All students in the 5th grade have received in-class lessons on social emotional learning and self-regulation, implementation of No Name Calling Week and activities and lessons. That actually was this past week. Planning the first ever middle school college fair. Again, it's becoming, we need children to identify sort of their path, and it can be a different path. It doesn't have to just be college, and it can really be about either just identifying vocations and your interests much earlier. And the kids love it, really absolutely love it and thrive. So Ms. Coleman also is completing lessons in December, for example. This is just some examples. She worked on compromising and respectfully disagreeing, and I think we all know that those types of skills in today's world are just really necessary. And then recognizing bullying is in January. And again, she and Ms. Kildoff worked on No Name Calling Week and mixing it up and just doing different activities, social activities within the cafeteria. So each month, Ms. Coleman really works on a college and career spotlight. So it's not just about college, but it's about careers as well, and using different opportunities, students expressing an interest in learning about the jobs they can have in high school. She created a bulletin board that sort of showcases what jobs teachers had when they were in high school and what makes sense, what can make sense for you when you're in high school, and so still being a student and enjoying work. And at the high school, they really are bringing in more and more speakers, but this is just one example. A speaker for the 11th and 12th graders, making good choices. You could sort of see the themes throughout. It really is about social emotional learning, and in my opinion, good choices and redemption. That when we don't make good choices, there is redemption, and sort of how does that look in your life? A BOCES representative is coming in to discuss with 10th graders all of their vocational options, so that by the time they get to 11th or 12th grade, they can really identify and participate in our local BOCES. College admissions night is in March. The counselors are taking 10th and 11th graders to the annual college and career fair in April. Seniors are hearing back from many colleges. Some of our students so far this year have gotten into Cornell, Northeastern, Penn State, Binghamton, Ohio State, etc. And some of our ongoing and new initiatives with our school counselors are implementing more social emotional lessons next year, really increasing our social skills groups, K-12, we identified a new observation tool for the school counselors, which I think is really helpful and reflective and will help guide our work in the future in identifying our new goals for our students and our parents. Identifying one psychologist, which I talked about earlier. In the middle school, we have one psychologist, one social worker, and one school counselor. And I think that the unevenness with CSE meetings and with just that transition aspect for families and students, having one person, identifying one psychologist will be very helpful. And then refining our social emotional curriculum in order to meet the student needs, and we'll take a look at that. That'll be a lot of summer work that we do. And then an advisory committee, so we will be holding either in late February or early March once the little bit of warmer weather starts to happen and we won't get, sort of hoping not to have snow days, putting together an advisory committee to advise our school counseling program to really have community input on that and those decisions. And then I started working on this, and I'm hoping to finish it by June, really creating a booklet or a map for parents and students on all of the things in grades 5 through 12 that they need to do with their children, or that their children need to do in order to prepare for college or career or a vocational program, whichever route they're going. I feel like there's sort of not a guide out there, and I thought a booklet or a pamphlet on really helping parents, have a, for lack of a better word, a check-off list, or am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? When should I be doing this? When should I be doing that? Just identifying all of those critical steps for parents and for their children. So that's sort of my presentation. Any questions?
Natalie, in light of your last comment, who handles the transitional services for our students in the upper grades in the high school,
Sure.
or our older students?
The school psychologists do. We do have our new social worker, Kayla, so I'm sure she'll be more involved in that. But I have to say, it really is in tandem with our guidance department, and most of all with the students' case managers. So each student in our district identified with a student with a disability, because specifically, I think you're asking me about students with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So each student has a case manager. That case manager works with the student, the guidance counselor, and the school psychologist. The school psychologist will help facilitate things. They each have a role. So those 3 people. Any other questions?
Okay, so in the staffing needs, what's the difference between a teaching assistant and a teaching aide?
Sure. So a teaching assistant can provide direct instruction under the direction of a teacher. A teaching aide is really about aiding a student in ADL activities of daily living skills, whether that is, helping assist to go to the bathroom, or walking them down a hall, or assisting them more in those types of ways instead of instruction.
Okay. When you were talking about the new and ongoing initiatives, have we stopped doing ruler? Is that still part of the?
No, it's part of our social emotional curriculum.
Okay. And the Worry Warriors, how do students get placed? I mean, that's a really interesting program, but how do students get in that? I mean, do they choose? Are they recommended?
Usually they're recommended into the group either by themselves because of, constant, whether they're
So they would
frequent
go to the
flyers to
guidance
the
counselor
nurse
and say,
maybe,
"Could I-"
or,
Okay.
or a teacher might identify them, a parent might call up, but they really are students who are identified as having sort of this chronic worry and anxiety.
Can they self-identify?
They
Is
do.
that- Okay.
They do, yeah.
Usually goes hand in hand with attendance issues.
Attendance issues.
Stress avoidances, school
Mhm.
avoidance.
And believe it or not, even our nurse, and, you'll see the same sort of children in there, and that's an indicator to us as well.
You shared the numbers of students that are placed out of district.
Yes.
Do we have, I know in the past,
Mhm.
we've had students placed in our district from other districts.
Yes.
Do you have any numbers on that?
So right now, we have one student who attends our district. We are looking to increase that. Right now, our numbers in our special class programs are pretty high. So we are going to look at whether or not we want to bring in other students. But right now, our class ratios in our self-contained program, our numbers are high at the younger grades. But we could look certainly at our middle school cohort and possibly bring in and offer other students opportunities to come here for sure. Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
More to come for sure.
Yeah, I just lost my screen, so sorry. It is midterm and Regents Week for the high school, so we've had a request to move our student representative report before our next presentation, which is the district calendar. So, student representatives, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. So far at the high school, everything has been running very smoothly. We're looking into having new performers come into the high school because the students love presentations and love to learn about different things, like the JCK Foundation that came for the juniors and the seniors. We really loved that program. I personally took that it was very helpful for mental health.
As stated, it is midterms week, and everyone's working very hard to get the amazing grades that they want. I had 7 friends come over to study for IB chemistry, and I would say that it was pretty productive. A lot of stress, though, but it was productive. For others, it is Regents Week, and it's also mini break for a lot of people. So overall, everything's going well.
Thank you very much. You guys are off to study now. So our next agenda item is going to cover a proposed or draft calendar for next school year. The first document we're going to show is the BOCES calendar. I don't believe this is yet adopted either, but we anticipate it being adopted soon. I think the nice piece between the two is, other than the location of our superintendent's conference days, our draft calendar is entirely aligned with the BOCES calendar for this school year. So I know in the past that's been a struggle, and there's been times where we were off sync. But according to both their proposed calendar and our draft calendar, as we continue to seek guidance from the board, as well as some input from the teachers union, who has an advisement role, that we think it's a pretty straightforward calendar for next school year. So you may notice we have superintendent's conference days planned before the Labor Day on Wednesday and Thursday. We would have a long Labor Day weekend, and then students would start on the Tuesday following Labor Day. In terms of vacations, the typical ones that people look for is we would have the week plus a couple of days for the holiday break. We would continue to have the February break, and then we would have an Easter break. That's the week before Easter, and then the Monday after Easter is also included. And then obviously the days in the spring would be the first give back days if they were needed in terms of snow days, if we exceed our allotted 6 snow days. And maybe one other change on this calendar is part of the newly ratified contract with the teachers affords them, in the event that we have no snow days next school year, that 2 vacation days would be added back to the calendar. Though we anticipate those days being added back the Friday before Memorial Day and the Tuesday after. In the event we have only 1 snow day throughout all of next year, 1 day would be added back. We anticipate that being the Friday before Memorial Day. And in the event we have 2 or more snow days, which in Putnam Valley is every year, then there would be no changes to the calendar.
So the distinction between, essentially between where we've been for the last year or two and where this is projected to be, just so everybody is aware, the things that are not built in are the day before Thanksgiving, the day before, the Friday before Memorial Day, and essentially that is because Labor Day is the latest that it can be in the calendar, which starts on that Monday, the 7th, so we're making essentially those 2 days up by not starting school until the 7th.
I could tell you've done this before.
Well,
Well said.
This seemed to be the
100%
simplest that we could
accurate.
possibly
Yeah.
do.
Because of late Labor Day, you lose a couple of days. Those were the 2 days that we would lose. That
I spent time reviewing, so I was ready for this one because I know it's one of my favorites, and this is kind of boring actually. 'Cause there's no real discussion.
And there are students
You know.
there are districts that are starting their students before Labor Day, but I think this makes a lot more sense. Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll wait and see if we hear anything else from the teachers union, and assuming they're on board with this, we'll bring it back for the next board meeting for adoption. By then, BOCES should have adopted their calendar as well, so we'll be in really good shape.
And there are changes, or I know when you're visiting with your other superintendent cohort from the other districts, if anybody else is doing something significantly different, it'd be good to know that as well. If we are, especially if we either have shared teams or are doing transportation issues with BOCES, even though we're aligning with BOCES, if Lakeland happens to be sharing some sort of run, it'd just be good to know stuff like that.
So we've had conversations at meetings already, with the exception of a couple of school districts that are considering starting with students before Labor Day. This is the pretty much the standard calendar of most.
It's a longer summer.
Okay. Moving into your report, Dr. Love. And then we'll go right after Dr. Love's report, we'll have public contribution.
So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to follow up regarding something that transpired this week that some of the community may be aware of more so than others, but as I think everyone's aware, with the closing of the median on the Taconic State Parkway at Pudding Street, we've detoured our buses up Pisco Hollow Road onto Richardsville Road, which has actually been working fairly well. Our buses have been coming in on time. They've been, we only adjusted pickup times by 5 minutes. It's been as smooth of as a transition as we can imagine it being, with the hopes to never have to cross to Taconic on grade again. So one of the issues that we thought may happen would be what happens in the event that we cannot use that detour up Pisco Hollow Road. So as luck would have it, there was a tree down on Pisco Hollow Road this week. Our buses had to turn around. So we have a state-approved contingency plan to bring our buses on the Taconic State Parkway, with the caveat that they enter on Bryant Pond, where there's a long entryway for them to get up to speed. In fact, the DOT actually sent one of their vehicles with the flashing light to trail our buses. So because it was sort of an emergency situation, we turned the buses around and detoured them down that route. So obviously some community members were concerned about it. People don't feel comfortable having the buses on the Taconic, and obviously if it's something we could avoid, we would. But in these cases, the reason why we have a state-approved plan is for instances like that. So in this situation, we were forced to utilize our contingency plan, and all students made it home safe without incident. So everything ended up being okay, and we hope we never have to use it again. So I do want to congratulate the high school cheerleading team. I know we spoke a little bit about it, but they placed, they were champions in the small school, large team group, and finished third place overall for the grand championship. And I did want to also recognize Angelica Ordonez for receiving that scholarship. And my conversations with Ms. Albano is that they are ready. The board approved them to participate in a national cheerleading competition down in Texas, and the team actually was able to fundraise every penny they needed for that trip. The district is only helping support the transportation to and from the airport, and I believe it was almost $25,000 that they were able to fundraise to support all the expenses of the trip. Our budget meetings are continuing. We continue to meet with buildings and departments to go over budgets one line item at a time. We've had an administrative team meeting where we talked about budget, staffing, systems. We are beginning my mid-year evaluation cycle with administrators, so those are all scheduled beginning actually today. Our facility project, we had our walkthrough. So we were happy with the number of individuals who showed up to walk through and sort of get a firsthand view of the project. I don't have the most up-to-date numbers, but we've had a pretty good response rate in terms of companies pulling the plans, contractors pulling the plans, and expressing interest. So in another 2 weeks, we'll actually get the bid openings, and we'll find out how many followed through with giving a bid. So we spoke a little bit about the CSA meeting, which is the area superintendents, and calendar was one of the items we had spoke about, as well as I was asked to present for a group of aspiring superintendents, which I thought was very nice for them to think of me. I'm more than happy to share my 6 months of experience with anyone who will listen. Curriculum Council actually met today. The topic of the professional development was around equity, and actually our elementary school Mandarin program was highlighted during it, so everyone in the region got to see a 2-minute video of that program. More to come on that. We were also, I presented along with Jill Figueroa today at the local collective bargaining workshop. We reviewed sort of the process and the outcomes of our collective bargaining with the PVFT, and we received lots of positive feedback from other schools in the area. And I think our third grade team had done some work this week with the PNW BOCES Environmental Education Group, Center for Environmental Education. Just a quick update on some events. The high school chorus was recently science research night where the students present their projects before going up to outside of Albany, where they presented. It's always a very humbling experience. The words you don't know, the list of words you don't know is often longer than the list of words you do understand. But I'm always amazed at the level of professionalism and knowledge and expertise our students present on these high-level, challenging topics. So it was well attended, and I hope the students got lots of good feedback to help tweak their presentations before the competition, which I believe is tomorrow. The Putnam Valley Education Foundation held a meet and greet. Today was our Chinese New Year celebration for kindergarten families. So that was at 2 o'clock this afternoon. We invited all of our kindergarten parents in to hear our students sing and count and carry on conversations. It was a great event. The students loved obviously having the parents there. The parents loved an opportunity to see the parents. We had some guests from PNW BOCES who we partner with for the program. So it was a fabulous event. I'll be sure to share some of the pictures and the videos. There's nothing cuter than 2 5-year-old kids carrying on a conversation in Mandarin. And tomorrow is our middle school talent show. This is something that I remember from my time in middle school. I don't know how many years it's been since we have one, but I know it's coming back. And myself, Mr. McCarty, and Dr. Mojica went over this afternoon and got a sneak peek of their dress rehearsal. And it's very impressive. We have some really talented students, and for anyone who's available tomorrow night, I'd certainly encourage them to attend. That's it. Thanks.
And there's nobody from the PTA? Then I'd like to open it up to public comment on both agenda items and on anything. Anything. I'm moving you up in the order so you can get a good night's sleep.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Gribbin. I'm a part of the community here, and I have a son. I have 3 children in the school district. Well, one is in pre-K, so she's coming on up. But this is my son, Daly. He's in kindergarten. And I guess before I get to Daly, I do want to make a comment on the Carbone Clinic coming in. Awesome idea. Super pumped. They're amazing. We've been using them at our preschools for a couple of years, one of them, and then we've been trying to get them into all 7 of them this year, probably next year. So really pumped about that for you guys. Okay, but anyway, to get to my son. So my son stayed home yesterday from school. He stayed home today from school, and he's not going to school tomorrow. He has missed approximately 20 days of school since the beginning of the school year because he doesn't have a nurse to go to school with him. Obviously, Dr. Left raised the point with the sports person, and they identified that there is an issue with securing substitute nursing. My son's medically fragile, and he needs to go to school so he can learn to swallow, so that he can weight bear on his feet, so that he doesn't get muscle contractures. I have been in communication with Natalie Doherty on this. My husband and I have been asking the school district to please get into place substitute nursing since the beginning of the year. Daly missed 3 weeks of school between October and November because his nurse went away. They have currently contracted with one nursing agency who I have used up to this point, and they are struggling to find nurses. I also want to make the point that my home is not handicap accessible, that I bought 10 years ago. Daly's 5. So that does compound the situation, and I recognize that. However, my son, one of your students, is not going to school. And on February 3rd, I don't have a nurse at all, period. Next week will be his last week that he gets to go to Putnam North and Westchester BOCES. There is no nurse in sight right now. Natalie is trying to contract with a second nursing agency and has had some interviews that I know of. One person did come to my house to interview. That person told the nurse who was on her way out that she should apply for the job. I asked that this happened. I asked that I meet with the nurse at 7 a.m. on a Friday morning, thinking Daly be on the bus, out he'll go. He'll kind of see the morning routine. The nurse will kind of see the morning routine. Well, he had a fever, so he stayed home. So the nurse who interviewed for the position stayed at my house for 3 hours. 2 hours, which she spoke to me, and then an hour after that to speak to the current nurse that's on her way out. I'm not in a very good spot. I need help. And I am constantly moving mountains for my child and for about 600 preschool students in the state of New York. That's my job. And it is an absolute blessing that I am his mother and that he is mine. Because I would have never known the travesty and the heartbreak that a mother has to endure day in and day out when they have a medically fragile child like my son. And it is constant. And they don't want to carry him, and I don't blame them, because even myself, on Monday when I stayed home because it was Martin Luther King and we were home, and I was trying to do floor time with him so he could sit and work on keeping his tone and keeping his head upright while he's just looking at the TV or watching my daughter play. I was trying to get up off the floor and I couldn't, and it was the first time I couldn't get up off the floor. I mean, I did because, I gotta. I go to the gym. I gotta make sure that I'm in good shape because I know what I gotta deal with when I grow up, when he grows up, and when I get older. I know you guys can't say anything, but you need to know that this is happening in your school district. And I think it's important that even though you don't see it every day, that this does happen. And I'm not just talking about my son not going to school because there's a nursing shortage or it's difficult to do it, but that there are children like Daly out there. I'm a working mom, and I have to work because I have a mortgage. So there's no opportunity for me to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to stay home with him. I think I don't know very many working moms who have who have this home life. There were only 6 children with out-of-placement positions. I think there's only one child like Daly in your school district who is wheelchair-bound, medically fragile. If you have another, it's probably 2. But just because it's one child doesn't mean that it should be overlooked or shouldn't be known. And I know you guys know that because we're all in here for the same reasons. But this really needs to be a priority because, quite frankly, his medical condition only gets worse when he's not at school, when he's not academically motivated, when he's not with his peers. And frankly, it's very frustrating to hear that a nurse was hired for the high school and my son's not going to school. And he's medically fragile, and he needs to go to school so that he can not have muscle contractures by the time he's 6 years old, and I have to take him now for surgery, and God forbid something happen. And it's the God forbid all the time in my head. All the time in my head, it's the God forbid. Because that other shoe is going to drop. In my lifetime, that other shoe will drop. And I hope you understand what I mean when I say the other shoe will drop. I need all eyes on this because I can't move this mountain alone. So I think you should know, you're the Board of Ed, right? For Putnam Valley. He's your kid. He's my kid. I need your eyes on this. I need you to help move it. I need you to find your networks. I need you to find your supports. I need everyone who can possibly help to find a solution to my situation. And I would move. I would move tomorrow. But I have to pay for Cobra to make sure that I have nursing care. I have to pay for a minivan that is brand new, that is handicap accessible. No, I'm not paying for the modification, but the van's a lot of money. And I had to get a van because Medicaid would only approve a van. So all of a sudden, all of my wiggle room in my salary or in my income is gone out the door. So I can't pay for rent, even though, Natalie will tell you, last year I was trying to find homes, but I can't. First I have to sell my house. Have you tried to look for homes that were handicap accessible in Putnam Valley? We live on a mountain. I didn't know that when I moved here, but now I know. So I understand that everyone's got a life. But you need to understand, too, that I'm struggling and one of your students in your school district is struggling. And for however many years that little boy is on the planet, we all need to fight together that he has an enjoyable life that is filled with laughter and love for all the days that he is here. I try my best to do that. But I'm only one person, and I can't get his butt to school. So thank you for listening. I hope that you've really understood the gravity of the situation I'm dealing with. And I really sincerely hope that this is not something that is swept under the rug and not talked about again. I really hope that this continues to be a topic of conversation at every single one of your board meetings when you're doing your behind the scenes. How's that daily boy? Is he going to school? I want to make sure my daily boy is going to school because he's yours. And you don't have too many of them. And I do not find it acceptable to say, well, we're just having trouble finding nursing. It doesn't matter. We still need to overcome that. We have to overcome it. So thank you for listening. I appreciate everything that you do for our students. Honestly, I'm excited for your new initiatives, especially in the special education department. I think you're going to see great things from the Carbone Clinic specifically, and or whatever their new name is. And good luck this year. I got 1 week. 1 week. And then I don't have any nursing care for my son to go to school. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your vulnerability and your openness.
Thank you.
Okay. We will be moving on to new business. I am going to ask you, Mr. Ferraro, to start us off with number 1.
Okay.
I got it.
That's fine. Uh-oh.
Thanks so much.
Get Daly a good night's sleep.
What?
Get him a good night's sleep.
He'll get one back. Thanks so much, guys.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby ratifies the execution of the certification form for the district's 2019-20 school year undue burden independent evaluator hardship waiver application by the board president along with the superintendent of schools for its section 3012D APPR plan. A copy of said application shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting as document number 11820.
Second?
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Number 2.
Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the board hereby rescinds its resolution passed at its Board of Education meeting on January 9th, 2020, terminating the employment of probationary teaching assistant Penny Wallach, and hereby accepts her resignation as a probationary teaching assistant effective the close of business on February 1st, 2020, as set forth in a letter dated January 14th, 2020, attached in the official minutes of this meeting as document number 122-20.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No?
Abstained? Moving on to number 3.
Resolved on recommendation of the superintendent of schools to appoint Matthew Brady as a part-time 12-month computer support specialist effective January 24th, 2020 on step 5 of the CSEA salary schedule.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 4.
Resolved on recommendation of superintendent of schools to appoint Melissa Keeler to a 1-to-1 support position for a classified student attending athletic competitions, cheerleading tournaments in January and February 2020, with compensation as per CSEA contract.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Number 5.
Resolved the Board of Education of Putnam Valley Central School District establishes document number 11920 attached to the official minutes of this meeting as the standard work days for appointed officials and will report the days worked to the New York State and local employees retirement system based on the timekeeping system records maintained for the 2019-20 school year.
Second?
Questions or comments?
This is for the district clerk, the treasurer, and the assistant treasurer. We now will specify what their day is, so it's just they don't hang around all day, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Number 6.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education approves the terms of and authorizes its superintendents of school to sign a separation agreement and general release between the district and employee number 01232020684 dated January 21st, 2020, as presented to the board at this meeting. A copy of said separation agreement and general release shall be incorporated by reference within the minutes of this meeting as document number 123-20.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Moving on.
Resolved to approve and authorize the superintendent of schools and the Board of Education president to enter into a renewal contract for student transportation with Orange County Transit LLC for the 2020-21 school year as per document number 124/20 attached to the agenda and official minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Questions or comments?
This was conversation we had at the last board meeting about the future of the one-year extension.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Number 8.
Resolved on recommendation of superintendent of schools to accept the RFP proposal for Maximum Healthcare Staffing Services, Inc. to provide nursing services for a classified student of the district. Proposal referenced in the official minutes, document 125/20.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, number 1.
Resolved to approve the consent agenda, items 2 through 8, presented to the board of this meeting.
Second?
Questions or comments?
We're approving CSE, CPSE placements. We're accepting generous donations from the New Horizon program, from Anthony and Jenna Miola, for the Scott Peltier Memorial Scholarship from Daniel D'Amato, and 4 generous donations toward unpaid lunches from Classic Masonry, Mr. Scott Lowe, and from Putnam Valley Petroleum Company, Mike Stelamaski, I apologize, Mike, and from Royal Coach Lines, and from Ben Cozy Northern Construction. We're approving the high school mid-year Regents practice. There are 5 staff members who are helping with the Regents at the mid-year. We're approving the establishment of a special funds for our one-act play accounts to be used for depositing donations that they get for the one-act plays, and for the science research program for money that the students raise for competitions like we just heard tonight. We're approving additional staff hours for 6 staffs to work with special needs students. We're approving graduate credits, 6 for 4 teachers, 9 for 1 teacher, and 3 for another teacher. We're approving we're approving additional staff members for the substitute tutor list.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay, I'd like to now open it up one more time for public comment from anybody or anybody on the board.
So I just, I have something to add. I want to remind senior citizens about about applying for the Enhanced Star. The application deadline is March 1st. I know they're accepting those applications at the assessor's office this month up until March 1st, and any help that they need in preparation of those documents to make sure that they're all entered into the assessor's, roll books for the reduction in September. So some of those forms are complicated. They are having a senior citizen, at the Senior Citizen Center, they will be having a day in February where they will be helping to define some of those questions that they might have, explain the forms, and make sure that they are indeed signed up for the enhanced star reduction for their school taxes in September. They can inquire at the assessor's office about what day that is in February, and I'm sure that it will be very helpful. Our staff is also available. We had an inquiry today. Someone came in, wanted help with the form, and we're going to meet with them next week, but the assessor is there to help everyone if they need it. So
Great, thank
March
you.
1st is the deadline.
Thank you. And I think, Ms. Parma, you had told us at their last meeting that I believe it's February 13th, Dr. Entreri is presenting
I
on
don't have my
the-
calendar, but yeah,
She's
whatever.
presenting on the late start,
Right,
so some of us will be going to that.
good, good.
Okay. All right, if there is nothing else, I would like to convene an executive session. Resolve to convene an executive session for the purposes of discussion regarding 2, proposed pending or current litigation, and 1 matter made exempt under federal law, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, after which time no further business will be conducted.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody, and stay warm.